Welcome to the Chain of Thought podcast, where we uncover the human stories behind innovations in crypto and discuss the vision for a fairer, more transparent internet.
The Secretary of the Treasury declared,
I see nothing in the present situation that warrants pessimism.
That was Black Thursday, but it was not the worst.
The time came when the ticker tape in the broker's office told a new story.
Welcome to the show, Leemo.
Thanks for having me, Batman.
Let's just uncover, what does Chief Nice Officer do?
Yeah, it's kind of I guess a made-up role, right? Encompasses quite a lot of stuff. Handle a lot of the marketing and content creation at Novasama. I also do a lot of community stuff. It's pretty much a lot of my days talking with people in the community. Try and do some BD stuff where I can. But yeah, just an all-encompassing role that's not technical. So I'm not a dev and not finance or anything like that.
I had Funky on the show yesterday, and it's interesting. There's this common conception that I was discussing with him as well, that people usually think that you need to know a lot about tech and you need to be very well versed in how to code and stuff like that just to get into Web3.
But it's similar to an engineering office, right? Which was my job before this, was in oil and gas. You can have the engineering team, which I was a part of. But then outside of that, you have people working for the company that are not technical, right? Obviously in a proper, let's say real world company, if that's the phrase we're going to use, you have HR people, accountants, estimators, all this stuff that are not really the most technical people. And you need those kind of people in a company to help it run, right?
Right. So this job at Nova Wallet, is this your first full-time Web3 job?
Yeah, it's my first full-time Web3 job. I was doing some stuff at Robonomics, and still am. That was my first kind of intro to Web3. Was with Robonomics in I think it was 2021, at the end of 2021. Just doing similar stuff to Nova, I guess. But yeah, it's getting a job in Web3 is really good. But there's a lot of people that get started in Web3 and think, oh, it's gonna be good. I can wake up when I want, blah blah blah. It's full on. It's a full 16 hours a day sort of thing. Especially when you're needing to talk to everybody in the community, help people out. Nova, we have people from all over the world using our app, and questions at 11 at night when maybe you want to relax and you're you really need to answer them, right? Because they need help. So it's it's full on all the time, but it's really nice. It's really rewarding. And it's cool working with people in Nova Sound Technologies and Robonomics. They're all really nice people. It's just really kind of rewarding, actually.
Yeah. Can you give an overview of what it is that Robonomics does and what is it that Nova Wallet does?
Yeah, I'll start with Robonomics since you said it first. Robonomics is it's a parachain on Kusama right now, and it's basically the vision is to usher in this thing called Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? So you had the first Industrial Revolution, which is steam power, right? Then you have the second one, which is CNC machining and all this kind of stuff. And the concept of Industry 4.0 is getting robots or IoT devices, machinery, whatever, that can act as their own economic agents within the supply chains and stuff like that, right? So it's putting the infrastructure in place to allow that to happen, right? So you might have so one concept that's quite fun from Robonomics is this this electric manipulator arms, right? These big robot arms you see maybe in a car manufacturing facility. So there'll be small and medium-sized businesses that can really benefit from one of those machines, right? Be that for packing stuff or whatever it is. But they're really expensive, right? So the upfront cost is a bit too high. So a concept that the team's working on is getting purchasing one of those with some upfront capital and then renting it out to a small and medium-sized business. And then they can either pay for it weekly or whatever, or one cool concept is based on the telemetry of the device itself. The device can charge for the work that it's done, right? So if you don't use it, then you can maybe get like a bit of a cost reduction. But if you're using it all the time, and the more you use it, the more maintenance needs to be done on it and stuff like that, it'll charge you per action, which is really cool. And the other thing that's like being worked on, I'd say like the main thing that's been worked on now is the concept of a sovereign smart home. So you have like all these big manufacturers like Philips or Google Home, whatever. But all of these devices, for the most part, when they say they're smart, like the Philips Hue light bulb does not have like its own integrated thing where it can make decisions. There's a central hub that makes all the decisions, right? And that central hub says you can only use Philips products, right? But you can make a device that's open hardware, open software that can connect to any of these devices through Bluetooth, Zigbee, MQTT, or there's a few other protocols as well. They're all like open protocols, right? So, and then you can, because you own that piece of hardware, using something called Home Assistant, which is again open source, you can locally control it through Home Assistant, which I think there's 500,000 people that use that worldwide at the moment. But accessing it remotely is a bit difficult. So Robonomics has an integration with Home Assistant where you can control your smart home remotely in a secure fashion. And the team's worked really hard on it. I think it was like a year ago. It took like a day or two for like even technically competent people to set it up. Now I was just with the team a few months ago in Cyprus. It took me, without knowing any of it, like 30 minutes to set up. And for somebody that's using Home Assistant, they're normally a bit like nerdy and really value like controlling their own home, right? And not giving the data to like Google or whoever. So for them, like an extra 30 minutes for something that's pretty cool and has some benefit, they're pretty into it. So that's like the main focus for Robonomics now, is this sovereign smart home thing.
So you mentioned a couple of things there. Like one was the use case for small and medium-sized enterprises where you can rent out things like maybe robot arms, and with IoT devices and connected to your smart home and things like that, Home Assistant and whatnot. Like these are these seem like two separate use cases, right? So where exactly does Robonomics fit in here? Like, does it make these products, or does it create infra to sort of manage these products in some sense?
Yeah, so like the parachain is like the infra for managing it, right? It's like sort of like a communication layer. But the Robonomics team is making their own hardware as well. So be that stuff to do with sensors. So we have like this open source sensor network. And it's basically people across the world. There's a lot of them in like Russia. There's a lot of them in Europe. There's some in like Asia. You can just take data of your environment, right? And you don't have to trust like the government telling you like how bad the pollution is, for example, right? So there's a use case in one of the, because the Robonomics team is Russian, a city there. They're actually have a lot of these sensors, and when some industry is like polluting the surrounding environment, the actual local people can say to the local government, hey, this facility has been added recently, there's a lot of pollution, we should maybe tell them they need to change how they're operating, or they should be paying some fine to then help like with the hospitals or the schools or something like that, right? So that's really cool. But we're making that self-sovereign smart home, that central hub that controls all of your devices. And the plan is to mass produce those and sell those as like a standalone kit, so you don't need to go on like AliExpress and buy all these like separate parts and put them together. It'd be like a single kit, and it's all the blueprints and everything are open, so anybody can, if you've got your own manufacturing thing, you can make them as well. So it's pretty cool. So it's both hardware and software.
Where does Web3 fit in all of this? Like, why do they need a blockchain for this?
Yeah, so a lot of it is this concept of like owning your own data, right? And just having some layer there. So the Web2 way of, for example, smart homes is you have this telemetry from your devices, and that goes to some central cloud, right? Whereas with Robonomics, you don't have that aspect of it, where some company gets to read all your data when you open your front door every day, you know, like what time you go to work, right? But the concept of Robonomics has been around for quite a long time, like 2016, I believe. The team was like early Bitcoin guys, and then when because Vitalik Buterin is like Russian Canadian, right? So when he's writing in Russian on all these like Bitcoin forums about his concept of Ethereum, the guys were like really into it. They were already studying like robotics at university together, and had this concept of Industry 4.0, right? Having machines or robots be their own agents in industry. So when Vitalik released this like concept of smart contracts and stuff, where you can, like atomic transactions, you pay some machine to do some job and it only gets the money if the machine does the job, right? That was a really cool concept to them. But then it comes up with like, oh, there's be a lot of like congestion on Ethereum. It's going to get really expensive. Like coming up with like concepts of layer twos and stuff like that, right? But then you have a issue of layer twos where it's like the validator set and how do you grow that and make it secure? Do you have a centralized validator? That's pretty boring, right? Like it kind of defeats the point. And then when Gav released I think it was the yellow paper was the first one for Polkadot. And it had this concept of like collators and then the validators of the relay chain, like actually like secure the network. So you don't need to worry about your own chain's validator set or collator set. That was really interesting to the Robonomics team, and luckily one of the guys was already competent in Rust. Akri, he works for Astar as well. So then it just they are still building on Ethereum, but there's a massive pivot towards Polkadot because it just answered a lot of the difficulties that the team had. But yeah, it was just like custom runtimes and stuff so powerful, like these custom app chains for your specific niche, right? It's just super powerful compared to smart contracts. But again, we still have Ethereum implementation. We're working even on Solana. There's this project called Neon, which is like an EVM on Solana. We're working with them to deploy our like smart contract stuff there. We're looking at, I think, Moonbeam or Moon River Moonbeam, where from like a smart contract on Moon River, you can call XCM functions on another parachain, for example. So that's pretty interesting. I think the team's looking at that as well. So it's just the possibilities and flexibilities of Polkadot and like all the interoperable nature of all these app chains together. It's just super cool, and it's worth exploring, right?
Have one more question about Robonomics before we move on to Nova. When you sort of talk about these small and medium-sized enterprises, right? Is there any other reason why one should maybe prefer to go for Robonomics instead of, say, a traditional Web2 solution?
It's a good question. I would say one thing that's pretty interesting there is if you're the one renting out the equipment, you have like guarantees of immutability from blockchain, and then just going away from like centralized points of failure as well, I think is pretty key as well.
Like you mentioned that these robots have their own sort of like earnings of sorts, right? Like who can own these robots? Can your average Joe sort of just like somebody who has money, can they just go ahead and buy a robot like this and use Robonomics to rent this out?
Yeah, pretty much.
They can.
Yeah, if you're the one with the device and you want to rent it out, so there's this. I think I'm allowed to say this. So like looking, for example, at we've looked at it for a while, like been exploring this with Vitaly and some of the guys. For example, using a product like Tin Lake from Centrifuge, where it's like a kind of crowdfunding thing to basically acquire the upfront capital to buy some of these machines and then rent them out, and based on kind of past earnings from similar machines, be able to say like, look, this is kind of the expected revenue that the machine will make, and then like doing like a profit sharing thing where if the machine makes, let's say, $1,000 a month, whatever it is, a portion of that goes to the people that actually put the capital up front to pay them back, right? So I think that's a cool idea, because I really think some of these robotics or machines, whatever you want to call them, they do add like a lot of value to businesses, right? You could have fully automated supply chains on certain things, right? And you can just run them 24/7. There's this concept of, I think it's called like lights out manufacturing, where it's just like a massive facility manufacturing stuff, and there's like maybe like one or two technicians just in case one of them goes down or something, but they can just run 24/7.
It's crazy to see that happening in real time. Like when you look at these shows, oftentimes you think that, hey, probably too crazy to be true.
Well, a lot of people get annoyed by, for example, machines are going to take our jobs, self-driving cars are going to take all the taxi drivers' jobs, AI is going to take all the artist jobs or something. But one thing that would be like an interesting thought experiment would be when the like steam power was first introduced in the Industrial Revolution, the first one in the UK, and all textile manufacturing just like boomed, and all this kind of stuff. Same as like CNC machining. Do you reckon people were probably footing it, right? Like people that had like textile like weaving jobs were like, oh my god, this new machine with like steam power is going to take my job, right? But humanity has progressed for the better because of these technological advancements, right? It allows people to do more fulfilling jobs, right? Nobody wants to really work in a factory the whole day, just like doing like it's tedious. Nobody really wants to work in a factory. It's a thing where it's like a necessity to do it, but people probably don't enjoy it, right? Whereas if the economy booms so much because of all these advancements, and it opens up opportunities for jobs that are maybe more creative or less tedious, or less manual labor, for example. So for me, I think it's a good thing, but a lot of people will always FUD everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at it, right? Like you have like one of the arguments, like the doomer argument, that everything is going to hell, like we are reaching the singularity and machines will take all of our jobs. Artificial general
coming.
intelligence is coming soon. Yeah, like and we'll all be jobless, and the few people, like the few technocrats, will be ruling the world, and everybody else would pretty much starve to death, I guess. Right? I mean, there's that part of the theory, right? And what I find interesting is that I think robonomics is kind of like one data point which suggests that it might not be that way, right? Like it might be more democratized than we think, or than what we might imagine, right? And there are a couple of things there, right? Like this also the case where if you have robots doing everything, right? Like if you have robots farming, if you have robots thinking for you, like creating new video content, creating podcasts like the one we are doing right now, probably better than this. There's that side of the argument, right? Where like robots could just do it all, and we would kind of become useless, and we would not have to do anything. And when we're not doing anything, are we useful to the economy, right? And if we aren't, then how do we make this work? Right, like would we just
but it's like
start
farming,
there?
right? Like imagine like 200 years ago or whatever, right? Everybody's like farming by hand, right? Or using like donkeys or something like that, right? Then steam power comes in, you have like the first tractors. Now you have massive like combine harvesters where like one person with a combine harvester can do the work of like 1,000 people, right? But people still have jobs, and it's opened the doors to better jobs, really, and more prosperity for the average person, in my opinion. So it's always going to be hard to know what the future is going to look like. But if history is any indication, all these technological advancements have always led to better lives for people in general. And one last thing for ergonomics that's really cool is the concept of like democracy for like smart cities, for example. So you could have a concept where like imagine like there's a smart city where like even like for example traffic lights, right? Being able to customize like how long the red lights for, right? So you could have like a referendum on a parachain where every person that's in the city gets like a one token or one non-transferable NFT, for example, that they can vote with. And it could just be a referendum, hey, I want to change the traffic lights on Main Street so that they're 20 seconds red and not 30 seconds red, and people can vote on it, right? So, for example, I was theorizing like a kind of a proof of concept where you would have like we have like a big board full of like IoT devices that like screwed into this board, and it'd be like, let's have a referendum every 10 minutes, just as automatically posted. It's like, change the color of the light to green, move this switch, right? And it's just, and the track can be like as long as you want it. So it can be a 10-minute decision period, right? So people have 10 minutes to change it, and it just shows this democracy in action, changing some device, which is like the proof of concept that this could work on like a broad scale for smart homes, smart cities, for example, which I think is super cool.
Coming to Nova Wallet, what is a Web3 wallet, Leemo?
What is it? To dumb it down, it is the application that you use where you can see all of your token balances, and you can use you can access staking through it. You can access potentially governance like you can on Nova Wallet or any DApp, right? So if you want to interact with like the Hydra DX Omnipool and do some trading, you can access it through the wallet. So it's like the kind of the front end for the end user to interact with all these amazing products people are building.
So, why might people prefer using a wallet instead of like maybe a custodian for their crypto that they might just be holding? Like, why might an average person care?
Yeah, so for example, we can take FTX as a prime example. I'm sure like people that are into crypto know about FTX. So that was like a centralized exchange that acts as the custodian of your funds, right? And people kind of compare it to a bank, I would say, is what the average person probably compares it to. So in a bank, you give your money to the bank. They then hold it for you, but they kind of don't because of fractional reserve banking. But you trust that the bank is not going to lose your money and that at any time you're going to be able to withdraw all of your money, right? Is how it works in when it's working. But then you see in some of these countries that maybe have some political issues or economic scares, people then start not trusting the banks, right? There was even one in America, the what was it, the Silicon Valley Bank and stuff like that recently, where it's like, oh, they have maybe a liquidity problem, so that means they don't have the money that people have given them. So everybody goes to withdraw all the money, and it's like, oh, we only have 50% of everybody's money, and then the government has to step in and be like, yeah, we'll guarantee you money. Like I think in the US, you guaranteed like deposits up to a certain amount, same as in the UK and probably a lot of countries. But if you've got more than that in the bank, you're not guaranteed it. And it's the same on these exchanges. You don't know what they're doing with your funds, right? They might be trading with them. They're not supposed to. And a lot of them now, like I think KuCoin and Binance and Coinbase, they all issue these reserve statements, right? Saying, hey, we have these assets in hand. These are all like the customer deposits, right? But you have to trust them, and especially if they're not actually posting those. Like FTX was just like kind of a bit of a clown show, to be honest. And then people end up getting wrecked and losing their funds, right? Whereas if you use a non-custodial wallet like Nova Wallet, you're the one in control of it, right? But that has some other risks or issues, I suppose. So everything's controlled by your private key, which is normally represented as a seed phrase, these like 12 or 24 words that when you put them all in, that generates your private key, right? And then you can access your funds. So a lot of people can get a bit worried, like, what if I lose my seed phrase? What if I send it to some scammer who pretends to be Leemo? Like, it happens. It unfortunately happens way too often. So there's that risk as well. Especially like losing the seed phrase. So there's like a lot of some like people working on like account abstraction in like various places in Web3 to try and overcome some of those issues. There's things like Telegram has a wallet as well, where you can, with your Telegram login, you have access to a wallet and you can't ever export your seed phrase, but it's just permanently linked to your Telegram account. Yeah. There's some people in this world that live in countries where the government is not very good. And it's not like in the UK where I might not like Rishi Sunak because of his, I don't know, like his economic policies or something. It's like actual like kind of tyranny, basically, or like absolutely poor decision making, right? And that can lead to you, if you want to leave the country because you don't agree with the policies, and all your money's in the bank, for example, you're kind of screwed because you can't withdraw your money. And then some countries, if you take their currency, you can't even exchange it anywhere else. You have to exchange it there, and then you have limits on how much money you can take out of the country, right? So it becomes like you kind of like permanently there. Whereas with like non-custodial Web3 solutions, you can have however much money you want, your entire life savings, and take it with you anywhere. It's borderless, right? And then you can set up a better life somewhere else where the government's not as insane in a lot of cases, right? I know a lot of people that have unfortunately had to do that, and if they didn't use Web3 and non-custodial solutions, they wouldn't have been able to do that. Even centralized exchanges have constantly changing because of regulations. Even in like UK right now, Binance is like heavily restricted in the UK now. Like you can't even sign up. New users can't sign up, for example, and they're limiting what you can do. They might limit like how much you can withdraw. They might freeze your account arbitrarily. Whereas if you're using a non-custodial solution, nobody's going to do that, right? Unless you're being really sketchy, sending money to like North Korea or something, and then Tether or Circle freezes your USDT or USDC. But don't send money to North Korea. It would be my advice there.
And I think despite that, despite like having Circle or say Tether being able to freeze some of your addresses, there are still alternatives, right? Like there are
Yeah.
a lot of alternative dollar pegged stable coins, right?
Yeah.
The trust levels may vary, but like if you're in a situation as dire as this, I mean, I would personally take that deal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I know a lot of people in various countries that have utilized this tech to be able to escape basically tyranny. It's super powerful, and even like people in countries where the economy is a bit shit, being able to utilize crypto and have either like dollar-backed stablecoins or even like Bitcoin. Like look at Argentina. If you were just holding Bitcoin instead of their money, it's like at all-time highs now in Argentinian money. So it would have been the right choice. And then you don't have to rely on the central bank not to make stupid decisions, right?
What do you think is the biggest challenges that we are facing right now in crypto, and like why do you think we are not able to see the similar kinds of growth that we have seen so far? Is it that opportunities are just over, like we have saturated the market altogether, or is it that, or is it just a minor speed bump that we need to overcome?
Well, crypto goes through these like boom and bust cycles, right? With bull markets and bear markets. Like I'm sure, like yourself, like it was especially for me in like 2020, 2021. Every single person was like talking about crypto, right? People come in not because of the tech; they come in for the gains, right? So like most people that you would have spoken to, you might be explaining the tech and the benefits of it. People were not interested in that. It was like, I want to buy Elon Doge Moon Rocket coin or like whatever, right? Shiba or whatever. And what unfortunately ends up happening is it goes, they get some astronomical gains, then it just goes really far down, and nobody actually, not nobody, but in general, like a lot of people don't value the tech at all, right? And what ends up happening is like in the mainstream media, whenever there's something bad that happens, it's crypto is a scam, everything's bad, right? So that's going to take a while to overcome, is that mindset. And another pain point is just UX as well. Like people, especially, this is a big thing in Polkadot in 2020, was the UX was just not great with like Polkadot.js. So people came and like, oh, this is like way too complicated, right? So you need to make products that are kind of on par with Web 2 products, right?
Yeah, user experience is definitely a problem, right? But it's also that the average user doesn't really do they really care about anything. Like what draws them into crypto is not the tech, it's not the products that can be built
money.
out of this technology. It's speculation, right?
Yeah.
It is that hey, this seems like people are getting rich here, like people are buying Lambos.
So somebody on
like
Twitter or
with 3
Instagram's
months and
told
stuff.
them that this coin's going to go up 100x and they buy it. Is the
Yeah,
the unfortunate reality that people sometimes don't want to admit. But then you have to hope that a certain amount of those people maybe come to Polkadot, for example, and then actually start to enjoy it and start to understand the benefits, and stick around and maybe help build cool stuff, right? Would be the hope.
You start with the price action, like you get interested because of the price action and you stay for the tech, right?
Yeah.
Or you leave, like either
Yeah.
way, right? Like one of those two things can happen.
There's a lot of people that believe in the tech and then go somewhere else as well. There's a lot of people that might come, for example, to Polkadot in the bull run last time, and then like, oh, liquidity's not here or something. And then all of what they've said they believe in, they just pivot to some protocols that maybe don't have the same kind of belief system, let's say, like really centralized, for example.
But I would argue that none of them actually leave crypto altogether. Like most of them end up staying within crypto at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think that is kind of bullish for crypto, like that retention, right? Of course, like many people just don't get it in to these things, so they leave, right? Like, but there is always, what happens is that there comes this wave, and the graph keeps on going up, and then it comes down, but it settles higher every time, right? And that's been the case so far, right? Like it goes up, it
If we're
comes
talking
down,
about
but
Bitcoin, we'll talk about Bitcoin. Yeah, yeah, sure.
yeah. I'm talking about like the larger sort of
Yeah,
macro
yeah, yeah, yeah.
coins like Bitcoin. Yeah, yeah. So I think that is bullish for crypto as a whole for sure, right? Uh, but like you said, like that's the case mainly for Bitcoin, right? Like, and maybe Ethereum because
Yeah.
it follows a similar trend. Uh, I still think that we are yet to, like, for third world countries, this is great. Like we have solved a problem, and it's very, very clear and very
Yeah.
evident for people who are actually facing these problems that, hey, this is a useful tech. Uh, Now I think we're at an inflection point where we need to figure out how do we solve, how do we expand, right? Like how do we expand this to first world countries, right? Where instability might not be that big of a problem.
But it might be the unfortunate reality that until there is instability,
Yeah.
right? I mean, look at the
Yeah.
Bitcoin white paper by Satoshi, right? It's literally like, oh, sorry, not the white paper, the Genesis block, sorry. It literally mentions like a UK newspaper about the Chancellor of the UK bailing out banks again for the second time in 2008, right? So,
Yeah.
like, it's only when it's like, again, a sad truth maybe, that it's only when there's times of instability that people start to realize the benefits of Web3 and crypto. Um,
Yeah.
which, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't be doomer and be like, oh, US is printing so much money, so it's like the European Central Bank and the Bank of England and all this, and oh my god, like the pound's going to zero, like oh my god, like the edge wants everybody loads of money, and like, but the the world goes through these cycles, right? There's the there's some guy that did a really good piece about this, about these cycles of, like, for example, Holland being a major superpower, and then it gets really good, but then they start like printing so much like money to like sustain themselves. Then the UK came up and became the superpower. Then obviously expanded a lot, and then they have to keep printing more money to like justify it, and then something happens. It's not like some either big internal conflict or a big external conflict. So in this case, it was World War II. And then it's like, oh shit, we need to print all this money to like win this. And then it's like, okay, US comes, and like now the US is a big superpower, and now a lot of people are saying the US is at this like at this peak point where it's like maybe coming on like a downtrend, and then maybe China's coming up, right? And it's when there's times of this like these like, for example, Argentina, mass inflation, like insane amounts of inflation. People are just buying crypto there. They're buying Bitcoin because at least it's like, okay, it has like, it goes up and down a bit, but it's not like going up by 1,000 or down by 1,000%, right? In like a year or whatever Argentina's money is. But fiat currencies, when they're not backed, there's nothing stopping the government or the central bank from having to print loads of money like they did during that nice thing that happened in 2020, right? And you never know what happens if something else happens. What happens if there's a major war? What happens? Like, you can't be safe from them having to print money to subsidize what's going on. And it's happened time and time again. Not to be like Debbie Downer, Doomer. But like, for example, Bitcoin doesn't have that problem, right? It doesn't have like, oh, okay, that Bitcoin BTC does get minted, but it's like at a steady rate that's like predefined. It's not like, oh, we have like 4 trillion in circulation. Let's just print 8 trillion like now in the next like 6 months, and like double the triple the supply, like, you know. So it might only be when there's times when there's like hard times that the general public of like more developed countries start to realize the benefit, which is not a great thing to talk about.
And that wraps up the first part of our fascinating conversation with Leemo. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll continue unraveling his personal journey and his vision for the future of crypto. Thanks for listening to the Chain of Thought podcast, and I'll see you next time.